Donald Trump has said that China owes the US and the world a significant amount in compensation for their handling of the coronavirus pandemic.
And we are not happy with China. We are not happy with that whole situation because we believe it could have been stopped at the source, it could have been stopped quickly, and it wouldn't have spread all over the world. And we think that should have happened.
The US president also announced serious investigations into how Washington can take action against China for its handling of COVID-19. Beijing has been accused of covering up critical information regarding the virus in January, silencing doctors who warned about the disease, and allowing COVID-19 to spread by failing to take action quickly.
Hello family, this is African Esquire TV, and I'm your host, Tierney Cherie. So it seems that the day that we have all been waiting for, the day that we all saw coming, is finally coming, and that is the day that European powers, as well as the United States government, is asking, or rather demanding, that China pay some form of reparations for the coronavirus outbreak. I'm going to read from an article from the New York Times. It says, global backlash builds against China over the coronavirus. Australia has called for an inquiry into the origin of the virus. Germany and Britain are hesitating anew about inviting in the Chinese tech giant Huawei. President Trump has blamed China for the contagion and is seeking to punish it. And some governments want to sue Beijing for damages and reparations. You heard that. They're thinking about suing China for reparations. This is, of course, the word that we hear often from people of African descent because we are, of course, the people who have been the most abused by the system. But this is also the word that we're told we're not allowed to use whenever we're seeking some type of form of justice, because for them, reparations is not an issue. For them, reparations is nothing. For them, reparations would essentially mean their demise if it was actually done according to what we're owed. But for some reason, when it comes to the needs of the powers that be, reparations is something that is on the table. It's just not for people of African descent. Across the globe, a backlash is building against China for its initial mishandling of the crisis that helped loose the coronavirus on the world, creating a deeply polarizing battle of narratives and setting back China's ambition to fill the leadership vacuum left by the United States, which is interesting. I've talked about this before on this channel. China was essentially poised to be the replacement imperial power in the world of the United States. And in my opinion, China has already surpassed the United States, although China does not have the military power that the U.S. has. China has the money, and in 2020, whoever controls the money is essentially who's controlling the world. And as much as the United States pretends that they do not rely on China, let's be real, most of the debt that the United States has is owned by China. So it's essentially the same as me saying the bank that owns my mortgage doesn't call the shots. Well, we know in fact that they do call a lot of shots. And we know that China is calling a lot of shots in the world, even if they don't have the military power to boost that. Now, China has never been receptive to outside criticism and has been very wary of damage to its domestic control and long-term economic reach, and has responded aggressively, combining medical aid to countries with harsh nationalist rhetoric and mixing demands for gratitude with economic threats. The result has only added momentum to the blowback and the growing mistrust of China in Europe and in Africa, undermining China's desired image as a generous global actor. Without reading the rest of this article, I want to get to the point of why I wanted to do this video. It's not as a sympathy to China, because let's be honest, when it comes to the interests of African people on the continent and outside of the continent of Africa, China is obviously not a power that has shown to be on our side, has not shown any real, true, genuine concern for the well-being of Africans. They've only showed superficial concern, and that is only strategically done to increase or to advance their interests. So we know that China is not on our side any more than the U.S. is on the side of Africa, any more than Europe is on the side of Africa. We know this. But I think what's interesting is that the issue of reparations seems to be one that is relevant to who has power at the moment and who can actually demand reparations. This, of course, is something that's relevant for all Africans because all of us have been damaged either by colonialism or by slavery or by some type of form of institutional racism. And therefore, we have to really consider what does it mean to have reparations and what does it mean to get reparations. But I think that what we can learn from what's happening with China is that reparations is not a demand that you make from a position of weakness. And that, if you look at the struggle for reparations in America, among Africans in America, that is one of the issues that we've had, is that without organization, a lot of us have tried to make the call for reparations and it has fell on deaf ears, because if you're not in a position of power to make those demands, either by being in power, by being in control, or by being in power, by being in a position to where those who are in control are at a detriment if they do not meet your demands. If you're not poised in that type of way, then essentially your calls for reparations are just calls for reparations and they're not political moves. And it's not just in America. Again, all over Africa, there has been calls for reparations because colonialism literally has set the continent backwards. There has been acts of genocide, outright acts of genocide that you can compare to the Holocaust, for example. Namibia, what was done in Namibia prior to the Holocaust, if you look it up, that was actually the testing ground for what would be done during the Holocaust, what was done in Namibia. So we know, of course, that the call for reparations is justified. There have just been so many instances of genocide being inflicted on African people on the continent of Africa, of genocide being inflicted on African people throughout the diaspora. And all of these instances just show that we have been the most affected by imperialism, by colonialism, by the rule of the West. And because of that, we have a legitimate claim to reparations. What we have to learn is that reparations is something that you make from a position of power. And if you have to beg for reparations from the people who are oppressing you, if you have to ask the same people who actually put you in the position that you are in to lift you out of that position that is going to be of no benefit to them, then that call is going to fall on deaf ears. So I've just been talking about reparations a lot on this channel because a lot of people have been thinking, does this actually prove, the coronavirus actually prove and show that we can actually get reparations in a reasonable time? And my opinion is that what it's showing is the strategy that you have to use whenever you are actually in the mindset to demand some type of retribution for acts that were done against you, is that you have to be in a position of power. You have to be in a position to actually pressure those people who are in power, and you have to actually have a reason that's going to be of a detriment to the ruling authorities. Otherwise, no one is going to take your claim seriously. So we shall see what happens as far as whether China would actually pay reparations, which I'm sure they would try to find a way out of it. But I'd be very curious if it is actually a rule that they do have to pay reparations, and at that point, you would probably see a whole different type of battle from the United States, who has the military power to actually enforce their rules, versus China, who has the economic power to be able to enforce their rules. All the while, us, of course, African people, we have to take note and actually try to see what type of basis we could base any claims on. Otherwise, we are essentially in the position that we are always begging the powers that be and not actually putting demands with some actual threats behind the demands, because we know that demands are not demands if they do not have something that is going to be a detriment to the power authority. So that's all I have on this issue. What are your thoughts? Do you feel like, America, Europe, they have some nerve, because although the coronavirus obviously has done horrible things in the world, especially to the Africans in the diaspora who are living inside of racist societies where they are getting little to no health care and little to no help from the government authorities. But at the same time, we also have to remember that while it has done horrible things, that colonialism has done even worse things. And so them saying that they need payback for the coronavirus, shouldn't there be an equally, in the conscience of the people, shouldn't there be an equal outrage against the things that has been done that Africans still are paying for, both past and present? That's the common sense thing. So what are your thoughts on the nerve of Europe and the nerve of America to actually make these demands, or be considering making these demands? That's all I have. I will see you guys in the next video.